We are about to turn this room into the most technologically advanced, next-level cinema and gaming room that you have probably ever seen. I'm literally about to get a call in 8 minutes, and on that call, we actually need to lock in and buy the products that we might well be using for the rest of our lives. And then we will set it up and we'll experience it together for the first time. I cannot tell you how excited I am. So when I first walked into this room, here's how I thought this was going to go. I thought, oh, cool. The room already has such good noise isolation. We're going to be able to get an awesome projector for like £5,000. Speakers will probably be another 4,000, and then the blank screen, maybe another 1,000. £10,000 total, and it's going to be awesome. But wow, have we seen some crazy stuff you can do to take it further. The first of which is, this is going to be a gaming room just as much as it is a cinema room. So we spent the first couple of days just deciding exactly which gaming consoles we wanted to fill it with, adding in extra TVs and finding a way to hide them in the room, and then realizing that we already hit our initial budget with that alone. But things only started to get really crazy when we headed to a place called Pulse Cinemas to find out what was possible with the audio and the projector parts of Dream Cinema Room. And it was super cool because these guys had actually built 3 different tiers of cinema, and each level introduced new layers of technology. But even their tier 1 cinema system, which by the way started at £30,000, had some very cool things going on. Like, one problem that you need to solve if you're going for a high-end cinema is you've got a massive screen in front of you, right? But then where do the speakers go? Yeah, you can put them on the sides, but we very quickly realized that you're going to get the best sound if at least some of those speakers are directly in front of you and facing you. So learning number 1 is that you can't just stick like a whiteboard on your wall as your screen. The best screens are made of woven fabric that is acoustically transparent. So it doesn't interfere with the sound at all, so that you can put some of your speakers behind it. But there is a lot more that we've realized you can do, and that we're going to try to do.
So that's going to diffuse the sound, so it's going to reflect the sound back into the room. If you put absorption into a room, it would sound like, I don't know if you've ever been to an anechoic chamber, but it would sound horrible.
Oh dear. So yes, turn out you don't just want absorption, like we have here. If you're trying to build a cinema, then you have to actually balance out audio absorption, reflection, and diffusion to make sure that the sound's traveling in the right way around your room. The only remaining thing to do then was to settle into these uber plush reclining chairs to actually see what this £30,000 investment results in.
My goodness. How had a string instrument so deep?
And that's partly because this was a 7.2.4 surround sound system. You actually see these numbers thrown around quite a lot in this world. So, just so you know, the first number means how many main speakers you have. The second is the number of subwoofers you have, which handle your deep bass notes. Most casual home cinemas will have 1, but these guys went for 2. And then the third number is the number of ceiling speakers, if any, just because those can add a whole extra dimension. So with that, I was so curious, what on earth could tier 2 do? Well, this was a £60,000 room. And as well as the obvious projector and speaker quality upgrade, the other immediately obvious thing is you can't see any of the speakers. This room is showing how if you use the same acoustically transparent material you previously had just for the screen for your walls too, you can actually create a completely next level bonkers sound setup in which you see no speakers. And that's so cool. But also, it's at this sort of what I would call very high priced here that you start to come into another conundrum. So most home cinemas will need some sort of power amplifier as the brains to process all the audio and video signals, to give you the ports to connect up to all your speakers, and to provide the power needed to drive them. But when you get to the high end, you start to realize that you're going to get better performance if you split this functionality into multiple boxes. So having a completely separate box dedicated just to processing and upgrading your audio signals, and then another just for upgrading your video signals. And that's what they've introduced with this setup. So we tested it.
All call. Any carrier in the sector, please respond.
I feel it in my bones. It's actually quite hard to describe to you how ridiculously impressive this second setup was. Like, my legs were actually shaking when the bass notes hit.
Okay, so tier 3. Ooh.
Wow.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Now, as you can probably tell, I was trying to keep my cool because, you know, you never want to get too excited around people trying to sell you stuff, but my God. I mean, this might just be the prettiest room I've ever seen, full stop. But then the guy introduced me to what this room is really about.
It's actually more to do with the Trinnov. It's an in-house developed system to give you the ultimate bass experience in a room. What it gives you is the seat-to-seat consistency of bass.
I spent about 30 full minutes trying to get to the bottom of what this Trinnov actually is. And long story short, this cinema system, which by the way is priced at £300,000, has 4 powerful subwoofers at the front. Those subwoofers fire out a wave of bass anytime there's a low note in what you're watching or playing. And then the back of the cinema is lined with 4 more of the exact same subwoofers. And this is where it gets interesting, because these are called the absorbing array, which basically sends out the same signal that the front is sending out, but just inverted in order to cancel that sound out, and then slightly delayed by the amount of time that it takes the front sound to reach the back of the room. And so Trinnov is basically the processor that allows super advanced stuff like that to be calculated. But why? Well, essentially to make sure that bass doesn't reverberate. It booms, you feel it in your soul, and then it cuts to dead silence again to give you the maximum possible audio dynamic range.